The Alpha King wasn't searching for his children. He didn't even know they existed. Yet in the middle of a crowded harvest market, his wolf suddenly froze, then growled, "Mine." Alpha King Riker Veilborn stopped so abruptly that the captain of his royal guard nearly collided with him. "Your Majesty?" Riker didn't answer. The lively market continued around him. Merchants called out fresh prices for apples and honey. Children darted between colorful stalls with sticky hands full of sweets. Musicians filled the square with cheerful melodies. But beneath the scents of warm bread, roasted chestnuts, rain-soaked wood, and autumn flowers, his wolf caught something impossible. Blood. His blood. The scent was unmistakable, ancient, instinctive, family. His heartbeat quickened. Without another word, he stepped away from his guards and began moving through the crowd. People quickly cleared a path. No one questioned why the Alpha King ignored the carefully planned inspection. His wolf knew exactly where it was going. The scent grew stronger near the eastern market stalls. Then he heard laughter. Two little boys raced around a fruit cart, giggling as one chased the other with a carved wooden wolf. They couldn't have been older than 5. One stumbled, nearly dropping the loaf of bread tucked under his arm. The other laughed so hard he almost tripped over his own boots. Riker stopped breathing. They moved, like him. The same confident stride. The same stubborn determination. The older boy looked up first. Silver-gray eyes met Riker's across the busy market. Eyes identical to his own. The world seemed to fall silent. The boy tilted his head curiously, then smiled. Before Riker could take another step, a familiar voice called out, "Kaylin! Rowan!" The twins immediately turned. Mom! A young woman hurried through the crowd, carrying a basket of vegetables. She wrapped one arm around each child with practiced ease. Only then did she notice the man standing a few steps away. The basket slipped from her hands. Bright red apples rolled across the cobblestones. Neither of them moved. 5 years vanished in a single heartbeat. Elena Ashwin, the woman Riker had searched for, until hope itself became painful. The woman the kingdom believed had abandoned him without a word. She looked exactly as he remembered, only wearier, protective. Her hands instinctively rested on the boy's shoulders. The twins looked back and forth between them in confusion. "Mom?" Rowan asked quietly. "Do you know him?" Elena's lips parted, but no words came. Riker's wolf surged forward again, not toward Elena, toward the 2 boys. Every instinct inside him screamed the same impossible truth. They weren't merely children. They were his. And judging by the fear that flashed across Elena's face, she had known that all along. 5 years earlier, the palace had been preparing for a wedding. Not a political alliance, not a treaty between rival kingdoms, a love match. Riker Veilborn and Elena Ashwin had grown up together inside the royal estate. He was the future Alpha King. She was the gifted daughter of the palace healer. Titles had never mattered to either of them. He escaped royal lessons to find her in the herb gardens. She teased him whenever he ruined another expensive pair of boots climbing orchard trees. When Riker finally asked her to become his Luna, the entire kingdom celebrated. Their mating ceremony was only 3 weeks away. Then everything changed. The attack came just after midnight. Poison spread through the royal council during a diplomatic banquet. Chaos erupted inside the palace. Servants fled through smoke-filled corridors. Royal guards battled masked assassins beneath the moonlight. Riker led soldiers to protect the city gates, believing the palace itself was secure. He was wrong. Elena had just reached her chambers when someone grabbed her wrist. She spun around. Captain Aldrin, commander of the palace guard, staggered toward her. Blood soaked his uniform. A dagger protruded from his side. "Captain!" He collapsed against the wall, struggling for breath. There isn't much time. Elena knelt beside him, pressing trembling hands against his wound. We'll get a healer. No. He caught her wrist with surprising strength. They know. Her heart pounded. They know what? His voice was barely a whisper. You're carrying the heirs. The words stole every breath from her lungs. She had discovered her pregnancy only 2 days earlier. She hadn't even told Riker yet. No one should have known. Aldrin's eyes filled with urgency. If they can't seize the throne, they'll destroy its future. He coughed violently. You must leave. I can't leave Riker. You must. His grip weakened. If he doesn't know, they can't torture the truth out of him. Tears blurred Elena's vision. He'll think I abandoned him. A faint, sad smile crossed the captain's face. He'll survive heartbreak. His voice faded. The babies won't survive assassins. Moments later, Captain Aldrin drew his final breath. Elena remained frozen beside him. Outside, the sounds of battle echoed through the palace. Inside, only silence remained. She rested one trembling hand over her stomach. 2 tiny lives depended on one impossible decision. Before dawn, wearing nothing more than a travel cloak and carrying a single bag, Elena slipped through a hidden servant's passage. She left no letter, no explanation, no farewell. By the time Riker returned victorious from crushing the rebellion, the palace celebrated the kingdom's survival. But the woman he loved had already disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind only questions, and a secret that would change all of their lives. The walk from the market to Elena's cottage felt longer than it was. Neither she nor Riker spoke. Kaelin and Rowan skipped ahead along the riverside path, completely unaware of the storm unfolding behind them. "Mom," Kaelin called, "can we feed the ducks before dinner?" "If they're still there," Elena answered, forcing a smile. The boys raced toward the riverbank. Riker watched them with a strange ache in his chest. The older one laughed exactly the way he had as a child. The younger one kept stopping to help tiny creatures. A beetle stuck on its back, a bird with a crooked feather. Pieces of himself lived inside boys who had never known his name. The cottage came into view. It was small, surrounded by wildflowers and a vegetable garden bordered by a simple wooden fence. A swing hung from the old willow tree. 2 tiny carved wolves rested on the porch. It wasn't a palace. It was a home. Inside, the boys eagerly set the table, while Elena stirred a pot of stew over the fire. Neither child seemed frightened by the stranger, only curious. Rowan studied Riker openly. "Are you really a king?" Riker smiled. "So they tell me. Can kings climb trees?" "They can. Can they fish?" "They should." Kaelin grinned. "Can they lose races?" Riker laughed. "More often than they'd like." The twins exchanged satisfied looks. "He seems normal," Rowan whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Elena covered her smile by pretending to stir the stew. When dinner was ready, the 4 of them gathered around the little wooden table. Halfway through the meal, Kaelin looked at his mother. "Mom?" "Yes?" Why was everyone bowing to him today? The room grew still. Elena slowly set down her spoon. She had rehearsed this conversation countless times. She had simply hoped it would happen years later. She looked at her sons with gentle eyes. "The man sitting with us." She glanced toward Riker. "Is your father?" Neither boy spoke. Kaelin blinked twice. Rowan frowned thoughtfully. Finally, Kaelin asked the question that shattered the unbearable tension. "So?" He looked directly at Riker. "Are you staying for dinner tomorrow too?" Riker laughed before he realized tears were running down his face. "I'd like that." Rowan nodded approvingly. "Good. Because Dad should help wash the dishes." The word hung in the little cottage. Dad. Not spoken with certainty. Not yet, but with innocent possibility. Riker looked at Elena. She saw gratitude in his eyes. And something else. A silent promise that if fate had returned his family to him, he would never lose them again. After the boys fell asleep that night, Elena carried an old wooden chest from beneath her bed. She placed it between them. "It's time," she whispered. "There's something you need to see." The cottage was silent. Only the crackling fire and the distant sound of the river filled the room. Upstairs, Kaylin and Rowan slept peacefully, unaware that the truth about their family was finally unfolding below. Elena knelt beside the old wooden chest. Its brass hinges had faded with time. She rested her hand on the lid for a long moment before opening it. Inside lay 2 carefully tied bundles of letters, one wrapped with blue ribbon, the other with green. Riker frowned. "What are these?" She lifted the blue bundle first. "I wrote these to you." He accepted them carefully. Every envelope carried his name. Every seal remained unbroken. His chest tightened. "You never sent them." She shook her head. "I did." His eyes lifted to hers. They were all returned. She reached for the second bundle. "You wrote these." Riker stared in disbelief. The handwriting was unmistakably his. "I sent every one." "I know." "They never reached me." For several moments, neither of them spoke. 5 years of questions suddenly had answers. Riker untied one letter with trembling fingers. The date was only 2 weeks after Elena disappeared. "Elena, I've searched every village between the capital and the western mountains. If you're frightened, come home. If you're angry, I'll wait. If someone forced you to leave, I'll find you. Please, just let me know you're alive." His vision blurred. He looked at Elena. "I wrote hundreds." "I know." She held up one of her own. "I answered every one I never received." She opened it. "Riker, I don't know if you're alive. I pray every night that you are. If I return before our sons are safe, they'll die. Please forgive me for choosing them first." A tear slipped down Riker's cheek. "You carried this alone." "I had to." He closed his eyes. All those years, he had believed she had chosen to disappear. Instead, she had been protecting their children while grieving the man she loved. He reached for her hand. "I'm so sorry." She squeezed his fingers gently. "So am I." Silence settled between them again. Then Elena reached into the bottom of the chest. This time, she removed something else. A folded piece of parchment marked with an unfamiliar seal. "I found this hidden inside one of the returned letters." Riker unfolded it. His expression changed instantly. It wasn't a letter. It was a coded list of names. Members of the Royal Council. Generals. Merchants. Each name was marked with strange symbols. His pulse quickened. This isn't over. Elena looked toward the staircase where the twins slept. "I never believed it was." Riker folded the parchment carefully. Whoever had intercepted their letters hadn't simply separated 2 people. They had tried to erase the royal bloodline. And if they had failed once, they might still be waiting for another chance. Morning sunlight spilled through the cottage windows. Outside, Kaylin and Rowan chased each other across the meadow with wooden swords, their laughter drifting through the open door. Inside, Riker stood quietly, watching them. His sons. 5 years of first steps, first words, birthdays, nightmares. All of it had happened without him. He swallowed the ache in his chest. "They're incredible." Elena smiled as she kneaded bread dough. "They are." After a long silence, Riker finally spoke. "Come back with me." She stopped kneading. He stepped closer. "The palace is secure now. I'll double the royal guard. I'll rebuild the nursery. I'll make sure nothing ever threatens you again. Elena looked at him with gentle sadness. No. The single word hung between them. Riker blinked. You don't believe I can protect you. I believe you'd die trying. Then why? She wiped the flour from her hands and walked to the window. The twins were trying to rescue a kite tangled in an apple tree. Rowan climbed onto Kaylin's shoulders, both laughing so hard they nearly toppled over. Elena smiled. Look at them. Riker did. And they've spent 5 years growing up without fear. They know every neighbor. They run through these fields without guards following them. They've never gone to sleep, wondering whether someone wants them dead because of who their father is. Her voice remained calm. I won't trade that for marble walls. Riker lowered his eyes. The danger isn't here. She turned to face him. The danger follows the crown. Those words struck deeper than any accusation. She wasn't rejecting him. She was protecting the life she had built for their sons. I already made one impossible choice, she continued quietly. I walked away from the man I loved because it was the only way I knew to keep our babies alive. A tear glistened in her eyes. If I have to choose them again, I will. Without hesitation, without apology. Riker crossed the room. He stopped in front of her. Then, instead of arguing, he bowed his head. I understand. She searched his face. There was disappointment, heartbreak, but no anger. No one should have had to carry that burden alone, he said softly. You shouldn't have. He looked out the window once more. Kaylin had finally reached the kite. Both boys cheered as it floated back into the sky. Riker smiled. I'm not taking them away from this. Elena's shoulders relaxed for the first time since he arrived. So what happens now? He met her eyes. If my family won't come to the palace. A determined smile slowly appeared. Then the palace will simply have to learn how to come here. Outside, 2 little boys laughed beneath the spring sunshine. Neither of them knew that, from that moment on, their father intended to reclaim every single day he had lost. Riker kept his promise. Every morning, he ruled a kingdom. Every evening, he came home to a little cottage by the river. At first, the royal ministers protested. Your Majesty, the journey takes nearly 2 hours. So does losing your family, Riker replied. After that, no one argued again. Soon, his horse became a familiar sight on the riverside road. The twins would hear hoofbeats before anyone else. Dad's here! The word came naturally now. Neither boy hesitated anymore. Kaylin was always the first to race across the yard. Rowan followed, pretending not to be in a hurry, even though he smiled just as brightly. Riker caught both boys in a single embrace. For a few precious moments, he wasn't a king. He was simply their father. Life settled into a rhythm. On Mondays, they baked bread together. The first loaf Riker made was burned so badly that Rowan declared it could be used as a shield. Even Elena laughed until tears filled her eyes. On Wednesdays, they fished in the river. Kaylin insisted every fish he caught was larger than his father's. Riker never argued. On Fridays, they worked in the garden. The twins proudly showed him which carrots were ready to harvest, even when they accidentally pulled flowers instead. Every ordinary day felt like a gift. One afternoon, Riker surprised the boys with 2 small wooden boats he had carved himself. They raced them along the stream behind the cottage. My boat's winning, Kaylin shouted. No, mine is, Rowan argued. The boats bumped together, spun in circles, and drifted toward a fallen log. Both boys chased after them. Then Rowan slipped on the wet bank. He tumbled into the shallow stream with a startled yelp. Dad! The cry escaped him before he even realized it. Riker was already there. He lifted Rowan from the water and wrapped him in his cloak. Easy, he said softly. "I've got you." Rowan clung to him, shivering more from surprise than cold. Only after several moments did the little boy realize what he had called him. He looked up uncertainly. "I," said Dad. Riker smiled through eyes that suddenly burned. "I heard. Is that okay?" Riker pulled both twins into his arms. "It's the best thing anyone has ever called me." Elena stood on the porch, quietly watching. 5 years had been stolen from all of them. She couldn't give those years back, but as she watched her sons laughing in their father's embrace, she realized something. They were no longer trying to recover the past. They were building a future, one ordinary day at a time. None of them noticed the cloaked rider watching from the trees beyond the meadow. He turned his horse without a sound, then disappeared into the forest. Riker noticed the signs long before anyone else did. A broken branch where no animal had passed. Fresh hoofprints near the edge of the forest. A campfire that had been carefully hidden beneath loose earth. Someone had found the cottage. He said nothing to the twins. Instead, he doubled the guards stationed farther down the river and quietly ordered his captain to watch every road leading into the valley. Life at the cottage continued as though nothing had changed. Kaylin and Rowan still chased butterflies through the meadow. Elena still baked bread each morning. Riker still read bedtime stories, even though the boys insisted they already knew every ending. He refused to let fear steal another day from his family. One evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Elena found him sitting alone on the porch. "You know they're coming." It wasn't a question. Riker nodded. "I hoped we'd have more time." She sat beside him. "I spent 5 years running. You don't have to anymore." She looked toward the moonlit meadow. What if history repeats itself? Riker reached for her hand. "It won't." "How can you be sure?" "Because 5 years ago, I didn't know what I was protecting." His voice was quiet, but unwavering. "Now I do." The next afternoon, Kaylin ran into the house, carrying a drawing. "Look." He proudly held up a picture of 4 stick figures holding hands. "This is us." He pointed to each one. "Mom, Rowan, me." Then he tapped the tallest figure. "And Dad." Riker smiled. "Who's the wolf beside us?" Kaylin grinned. "That's your wolf. So everyone knows you'll protect us." The innocent words tightened something deep inside Riker's chest. "I always will." That night, the wind carried an unnatural silence. No owls called, no crickets sang. Even the river seemed strangely still. Riker woke before dawn. His wolf was already alert. Outside, a horse snorted, then another, then dozens more. A sharp whistle cut through the darkness. The captain of the Royal Guard burst through the front door. "Your Majesty!" "They're here." Almost instantly, arrows struck the cottage walls. Glass shattered. The twins jerked awake upstairs. Elena rushed toward the staircase. Riker drew his sword in one smooth motion. His eyes met hers. "Take the boys to the cellar." "And you?" A fierce smile crossed his face. This time, he opened the front door as armored soldiers poured across the meadow. "They'll have to come through me." The Alpha King stepped into the dawn. Behind him stood the family he had spent 5 years searching for. Ahead of him waited the enemies who had stolen those years. This time, no one was running. The first attacker never reached the front steps. Riker's sword struck with the speed of a wolf defending its pack. The man fell before he could raise his blade. Steel clashed across the meadow. Royal Guards emerged from hidden positions among the trees, surrounding the cottage from every direction. The conspirators had expected a frightened family. Instead, they found an Alpha King who had prepared for them. "Protect the cottage," Riker commanded. "No one gets inside." The battle raged beneath the pale light of dawn. Arrows flew. Horses screamed. The quiet riverside meadow became a battlefield. Inside the cellar, Elena held Kaelin and Rowan close. The boys trembled as distant sounds of fighting echoed above them. "Is Dad okay?" Rowan whispered. Elena brushed a hand through his hair. "Your father made us a promise, and he always keeps his promises." Outside, the final wave of attackers charged. Riker shifted. A massive silver wolf burst forward with a thunderous growl. The remaining enemies faltered. Many dropped their weapons before the Alpha King's wolf even reached them. By sunrise, it was over. The surviving conspirators were bound in chains. Among them stood several respected nobles. Men who had publicly sworn loyalty to the crown for years. Riker recognized every face. His expression hardened. "So it was you." One elderly noble laughed bitterly. "We couldn't allow the bloodline to continue." Riker stepped closer. "It already has." He glanced toward the cottage. "And now the kingdom will know it." Within days, the royal council convened. The evidence was undeniable. The intercepted letters, the coded lists, the captured conspirators, every lie unraveled before the court. Titles were stripped, estates confiscated, fortunes seized. Riker issued one final decree. The wealth stolen through betrayal will rebuild what betrayal tried to destroy. New schools rose across the kingdom. Orphanages received funding. Hospitals expanded. Families who had suffered under the conspirators' rule were finally given justice. Weeks later, Riker returned to the riverside cottage. This time, no guards waited outside. No hidden enemies watched from the forest. Only birdsong filled the morning air. He found Elena sitting beneath the willow tree, while the twins skipped stones across the river. He sat beside her. "I won't ask again unless you're ready." She looked toward their sons. They laughed freely, without fear, for the first time since they were born. Then she turned back to him. "I think," a gentle smile appeared, "the kingdom finally feels like a place our children can call home." Riker took her hand. Together, they watched the twins race along the riverbank. Soon, they would all be going home together, not because the palace demanded it, because it had finally become worthy of them. 5 years later, the harvest market was louder than ever. Musicians filled the streets with cheerful songs. Children darted between colorful stalls. The scent of warm bread, honey cakes, roasted chestnuts, and fresh apples drifted through the crisp autumn air. 2 boys raced through the crowd, laughing as they tried to catch one another. Except they were no longer little boys. Kaelin and Rowan had grown into confident young princes. "Last one to the baker buys the honey cakes." Kaelin shouted. "That's not how races work," Rowan yelled, sprinting after him. Their laughter echoed through the market. Merchants smiled as the twins hurried past. The people loved their princes, not because of their titles, but because they had grown up among ordinary families before returning to the palace. Nearby, Elena watched with a smile. Riker slipped his hand into hers. She looked at him. "You still worry?" He gave a sheepish smile. "They're fast. They're also surrounded by half the royal guard." "I still worry." She laughed softly. "Some things never change." The twins returned moments later, proudly carrying far more honey cakes than either of them could possibly eat. "We negotiated a discount," Rowan declared. "The baker surrendered," Kaelin corrected. The elderly baker chuckled. "They're impossible. They learned from their father," Elena replied. Riker pretended to look offended. "I have excellent bargaining skills. You paid full price. I was supporting local business." Everyone laughed. As the afternoon faded into evening, the family wandered toward the very corner of the market, where everything had changed years before. Riker paused. "This is where I first caught your scent." The twins exchanged confused looks. Our scent? Riker nodded. My wolf stopped right here. I didn't know why. I only knew I had to find whoever carried my blood. Kaylin looked at Elena. Mom, what if Dad had chosen another street that day? She smiled, her eyes warm with quiet certainty. He wouldn't have. How do you know? She looked at Riker before answering. Because your father's wolf was never searching for strangers. It was searching for its family. Riker squeezed her hand. And once I found you, I never planned to let you go again. As the sun set over the marketplace, the royal family walked home together, through streets filled with laughter and celebration. The kingdom believed an alpha king had found his heirs, because he recognized their scent. But those who knew the whole story understood something greater. A father found his sons, because a mother loved them enough to disappear. A family remained together, because a king chose to earn every moment he had once lost. And from that harvest market forward, no child in the kingdom ever doubted that the strongest kingdoms were not built by crowns, but by families who refused to stop finding one another.